We're so glad that you found this Peak City message today. Our prayer is that during our time together, you're able to discover Jesus and are encouraged to follow him fearlessly.
If you have a Bible, get to Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2 is where we're going to be. If you're new, welcome to the family. We're pumped to have you. If you're watching with us online, shout out to you. We're thrilled to have you with us as well. Can't wait to meet you in person. Acts chapter 2. We're in week 2, part 2 of this little short teaching series we're doing called Follow. Where really we're all just talking about what does it look like and mean to really follow Jesus. When you got 41 people getting baptized, every single Sunday someone's raising their hand to give their lives to Jesus. Just last hour we had 2 people that made the decision to start following Jesus, which is incredible. It's amazing. With all that stuff happening though, we got to rally together around what does it really mean to follow. And last week we started by saying we're going to institute this new rhythm in the life of our church. We're going to read the Bible together. And you need to know that the heart behind that is not that we would all become a bunch of Bible nerds. Okay? I don't want to stand before God one day and say, man, we led a great church. We didn't reach anybody. We didn't serve the least of these. And we didn't really love people. But man, we knew the Bible well. I have no desire for us to become a Bible. But the reason that we're reading the Bible is because we want to get as close as we can to Jesus. And we know that when you read the Bible, you get close to Jesus because that's what it means to follow. See, we said last week that when we hear the word follow in the 21st century American context, we think social media. We think distant observation. Right? I'm going to follow a news story and just kind of keep up with what's happening, but it's not like this follow concept really requires anything of me. But that's not what Jesus meant when he called his earliest disciples and when he called us to follow him. Jesus does not invite you into a distant observation. Instead, he invites you to close imitation. To get as close as you possibly can to Jesus so that you can know how he walks, how he talks, how he lives, how he loves, how he leads. So that when you walk into the room, so that when you walk into your school, your workplace, your home, it's as if Jesus walked in, right? We're going to follow him. We're going to get as close as we can. So we're going to read the Bible because it's his word, right? Because we need to get as close as we can. It's hard though. It's hard to follow. We said this last week. What we're reading in Acts chapter 2 is the first group of people who followed Jesus without him being there in the flesh, right? And that's what we're dealing with. How do you get as close as you can to someone who's not there? How do you make sure that Jesus doesn't become out of sight and out of mind? Right? Out of sight, out of mind. My parents were in town visiting last week. They're from Kentucky. My sweet small hometown of Nicholasville, Kentucky. They still live there. And they drove all the way out, 16 hours out to come see the kids and the grandkids, and had a great time with them. But it never fails, and if your parents still live in your hometown, I'm sure you deal with this too. But my parents will always, when we're together, because they still live with everyone I grew up with, they will say, hey, do you remember so-and-so? And I always feel bad because I'm like, no, because I don't remember people in first grade. Like, I just can't remember. But this trip, they came out and they're like, hey, do you remember Tommy? And the minute they said Tommy, I swear it was like I transported back in time and I could tell you everything about Tommy. Like Tommy, I was like, you mean Tommy, the big left-handed pitcher from my 9 and 10-year-old baseball team? Like, yeah, Tommy. I was like, I remember Tommy. Tommy, the guy that always looked like he had like a chew in his lip, but he didn't. He'd always talk like this. You know what I'm saying, man? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I could like smell Tommy. Like it was like I transported back. But I'm telling you, I hadn't thought about Tommy in 25 years. I mean, that dude had not crossed my mind. He was out of sight and out of mind. And what I'm learning more and more about our 21st century American context of spirituality and faith is that for most people, God is out of sight, out of mind. And maybe you're here and you're new to all this. And for you, God has been out of sight, out of mind your whole life because you're like me. You didn't grow up in church, haven't been reading the Bible. It's just new to you, out of sight, out of mind. But I'm learning that even for many of us who call ourselves Christians, we come to church on Sundays and we get our little hour dosage of Jesus and he's in sight and top of mind for a couple hours on Sunday. But then we go out the rest of our week and he becomes out of sight, out of mind really quick. And today what I want to show you in Acts chapter 2, I want to show you how the earliest followers of Jesus kept Jesus in sight and top of mind. Though he was not with them, though they could not see him, I want to show you how they were actually able to see him and how you every single day can actually see Jesus, because it's a heck of a lot easier to follow somebody if you can see him. Y'all ready? Come on, man. Come on. You ready for God to teach you something today? Not me. God speaks through me. God speaks to me. Like when I'm preaching, I'm listening. When I'm preaching, I need this. Like, I'm preaching to you, I'm preaching to me. Like, there's this weird thing happens, I can't even describe what it is. Because, man, I'm messed up. And I'm by no means arrived. But I've seen over and over that when someone comes in, prayed up, and working on something that God wants them to say, and y'all come in ready to receive, even when I'm not up preaching, I'll sit on the edge of my seat every time someone else is preaching. Because I know God shows up. God speaks to his people, through his people. And so I don't know I don't know how he does it. And there's nothing special about me. I just know this is what happens. This is how he shows up. So I say it again. Are you ready to receive from God today? Not from Petie. It ain't me. If it was me, it would just be messed up. Acts chapter 2. We start in verse 41. I want to read the whole thing to you. It's going to get uncomfortable today, okay? Like real uncomfortable. In fact, just real quick before we do this, just so I got to warm you up to something that's going to happen later on. I want you to turn to somebody sitting near you and just say, we're going to get close. If you're online and you have nobody watching with you, I'm so sorry. Come here in person and we'll get close. Some of y'all that are new are like, I do not like what I've just walked into. You'll like it by the end. Verse 41 through 47. This is our home base for the next few weeks. It says, those who accepted his message were baptized, and about 3,000 were added to their number that day. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. And everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had a need, and every day they continued meeting together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. It's the description of what the first followers of Jesus, who did not have him in the flesh, what they did. How did they follow? That's it. Now today I want to live in just three little parts of that all kind of circle around the same theme. Verse 42 says they devoted themselves to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Verse 44 says all the believers were together and had everything in common. Verse 46 says every day they continued to meet in the temple courts, and they broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. These people liked hanging out. They liked to be together, man. I mean, it was like somebody had to be able to cook up in that group or something, man. Somebody had to be a good chef. Somebody had to have that sourdough recipe on lockdown or something, because they just couldn't get enough of each other. Every day they were together. Every day they broke bread in their homes. Every day they went to church together. Nonstop. It says they were devoted to fellowship. If you're with us last week, you remember that word devoted. The Greek word is proskarteros. It means to be strong towards, firm towards, steadfast towards. We said it's like can't stop, won't stop. Right? They said can't stop, won't stop reading the Bible. And they said also we are just as can't stop, won't stop. Nothing will keep us from fellowship, from being together. And now here's the deal. I can't read that word fellowship and not get some bad church flashbacks. Some of y'all are laughing because you've been in church before and you know what I'm about to say, okay? I didn't grow up in church, okay? So when I came to faith, it was at the age of 17, and I got into ministry as a pastor about 3 or 4 years later, and I'll never forget when my lead pastor said, hey, Petie, this Sunday night we're having what's called a fellowship gathering. How many of y'all ever been, church people, ever been to a fellowship gathering? Yeah, you know what's about to happen. I said, hey, help me understand what's a fellowship gathering. I ain't never heard of such a thing. And they said, well, best way I can describe it is like a Christian party. And I said, well, I've partied before. I know how to do this. Let's go, man. Let's have some fun. Fellowship gathering, Sunday nights. Let's go. I go to that first fellowship gathering, and I'm like ready to have fun. I'm ready to mingle. And I see this just like fold out tables and average casseroles and everyone just like sitting around talking about nothing. And I was like, guys, y'all need to get out more. This is not fun. And that was it. It was just like you sit around and most people I was talking to, they were acting like they were better than they really are. They were, the spiritual lingo's at an all-time high. Amen, brother. Amen, sister. Praise God. Hallelujah. And I'm like, where am I right now? And then sure enough, the next day at our staff meeting, our lead pastor was like, hey man, let's evaluate the weekend. How did the fellowship gathering go? And I wasn't going to say anything because I was new in this whole deal. Every other staff member was like, that was a blessed time of fellowship today, pastor. Really loved it. Thought the Lord moved. And I was like, I don't think I'm a Christian, man. I'm trying so hard, but I don't think I belong here. I think we have different definitions. Fellowship, what I observed when I heard the word fellowship is it was code for fake friendships with a little bit of Jesus sprinkled on top. And I know some of y'all experienced it and it was the glory days and it was good for you. That's awesome. I'm just saying, my experience and what I've heard from most people, fellowship gathering is like a lame Christian attempt at a party. And so I hear that. And again, there is also a cultural narrative. You need to be aware. I feel like one of my jobs as your pastor is to make you aware of the narratives that are force fed to you, that are so loud and so constant that you're not even really aware of them. There is a narrative that's been forced for the past 20 or 30 years that all Christians are lame, Christians can't have fun, that God is a killjoy, that if you're going to come to church, you better put on your Sunday best and act like you're better than you are. That's a narrative, just so you know. But my experience combined with some narrative led me to see this, and I see they were devoted to fellowship. Like of all the things you could devote, this group of people, I mean, come on, they were persecuted. Their lives were on the line. Jesus gave them a mission. Take my message to the ends of the earth. They're persecuted. They're on a mission and they devote themselves to fellowship. Like it's an odd choice, man. It's like my kids' clothing choice in the Colorado spring when they go outside. I'm like, why would you wear that? Why would you not put on a sweatshirt? Why do you want to wear shorts and a t-shirt in Colorado spring where it's 20? Okay, side note. For all you Coloradans that are natives, good for you. When I hear people who lived here for a long time say, just the Colorado spring, better get used to it, I will never get used to this. And you shouldn't either. This is wrong. It's an atrocity. It's bad. But my kids go out and wear nothing. They wear like shorts and a t-shirt, and it doesn't matter what Brittany and I say. I'm like, babe, let's just let them freeze. Let them freeze. See what happens. It's an odd choice, though. It's an odd choice. Why would you devote yourselves to fellowship? It didn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense unless the cultural narrative and our experiences have given us the wrong definition of the word fellowship. And that's why it's so important for you to read the Bible on your own. That's why it's so important for you to dig into the Word of God for yourself, for you to study, for you to grow, for you to learn. That's why this Bible reading plan, man, I know there's some weird verses here and there and we can figure it out. We can ask questions together. We're trying to equip you with the tools you need to dig in for yourself. Because when you dig into the Word of God and you dig into the word fellowship, you see everything that you need to know. The word fellowship, the original Greek word is a very fun word to say. Koinonia. Everybody say koinonia. 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 And what's interesting is we hear koinonia and it got translated fellowship, but dig. Read for yourself because that same word is actually used several other times in the New Testament. But it's not used to describe fake friendships with a little bit of Jesus sprinkled on top. That same word is used, but it's not used to describe a lame attempt at a Christian party. It's actually very different. Look with me in 1 John 1:3. It says, we proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you also may have koinonia, fellowship with us. And our koinonia, fellowship, is with the Father and with His Son, Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 1:9 says it like this. God is faithful, who has called you into koinonia, fellowship with his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Philippians 3:10. My goal is to know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, the koinonia of his sufferings. I want you to catch this. The same word that they used to describe the closeness of their community, the same word they used to describe the closeness of their relationships with fellow followers of Jesus is the same word they use to describe the closeness of their relationship with their heavenly Father. Koinonia. The same God who knows you inside and out. The same God who is with you at all times. In him we live and we move and we find our being. God. They said they were that close to one another. Koinonia is fellowship, See, the translators, you can't really blame the translators because here's the deal. Koinonia, it was meant to be this powerful bond, this powerful community, this powerful family, but they couldn't translate it family because it was more than family. And they knew a lot of us got messed up families. They couldn't translate koinonia community because, you can get community anywhere. You get community at the gym, right? They couldn't translate it friendship because it was more than friendship. So they tried to find a word that was holy. They tried to find a word that was sacred. They tried to find a word that carried some weight to it to say this is bigger than anything you've ever experienced. It's a tighter knit community than anything you've ever known. And so they stuck with fellowship. And I get it. Culture hijacked it. The Sunday school era probably didn't help. All that stuff. But what they're trying to say, that's what I say, let's forget the debate about the right word. Let's just translate it into terms you and I can relate to. Okay? Let's call it what it is and just describe it. When they say koinonia, when they say they were devoted to the fellowship, here's the modern Peak City translation. Okay? The earliest followers of Jesus prioritized God-focused and consistent relationships. The earliest followers of Jesus prioritized God-focused and consistent relationships. Okay? God-focused. They prioritized relationships that were more, I'm going to say some things over the next little bit that are going to step on your toes, but I'm going to say them real quick. Okay? It's like I don't want to jam on your toes, but I'm just going to dance on them and go across. Okay? They prioritized relationships that were more than just the guys getting together, drinking beer and talking about sports. They prioritized relationships that were more than just the ladies getting together and gossiping about the girl who's getting a divorce down the street. They prioritized relationships that were more than just whining and moaning and complaining about work and the economy. It was relationships that were God-focused. It made them better at following Jesus. They prioritized relationships that could hold them accountable, that could pray for them, that could encourage them, that would fill them up with even more faith. They prioritized relationships that actually helped them follow Jesus. God-focused relationships and not just God-focused, consistent. That's the thing that stands out to me the most when I read this, is it was day after day after day after day, night after night, consistent. It was someone you would text message, you'd hop on a Zoom call with, you'd FaceTime if you hadn't seen him in a while. But you would fight tooth and nail to get in front of them and to get with them, right? They were devoted to these God-focused and consistent relationships. And you have to catch that word that predicates it. They were given priority. They prioritized relationships with God-focused, consistent Jesus followers. Prioritized. That's why I'm going to run across this one real quick. I don't want to hurt your toes too bad, but I'm going to hurt them a little bit. They prioritized relationships with God-focused, consistent Jesus followers. They gave those relationships priority over their kids' sports schedules. They prioritized those relationships over working more and making more money. They were given more priority than just, I'll see him on Sunday and for 5 minutes in the lobby. Come on. It was like family. It was community. It was tight-knit. It was fellowship. It was so close. It was so beautiful. And the world had never seen anything like it. Keep in mind, this tight-knit family, this tight-knit community, this fellowship, this koinonia, it empowered this group of people to be the generation that started the most powerful spiritual movement in human history. It was powerful, unlike anything the world had ever seen. And they were consumed with it. Koinonia, fellowship. They prioritized relationships that were God-focused and consistent. Now, cut through the noise, cut through the facade, cut through the Sunday best, cut through the spiritual crap. Real talk. That's what they did. Koinonia. God-focused, consistent relationships. It was the most important thing in their life. As committed as they were to the Bible, they were that committed to each other. But let's real talk. Now let's move to us today. Let us not pretend like we have what they had. Okay. I know it's happening in pockets. Just like last week when I said 80% of people who call themselves Christians don't read the Bible. I know there's some people that do have koinonia. I could point you to a couple different groups of young adults in our church, our young moms group that meets together. There's some pockets where people are doing life together, and they're in it, and it looks like koinonia. It's happening in pockets, but let's just be real. Most of us don't have what they had. Coming in and sitting on a Sunday for an hour and talking for 5 minutes in the lobby is not koinonia. That's not the summation of it. Most of us come in here and we sit and we maybe chat for a little bit out there, and then we're off to the rest of our week, and Jesus is out of sight, out of mind. We don't have what they had. And I know that from my vantage point as a pastor. I know it because of the difference I've seen in all of us pre-COVID and post-COVID. I know we don't want to talk about COVID anymore. I actually told my wife about a month ago that I never wanted to talk about it again because I was so sick of telling the story. I was so sick of giving it any airtime. I was just so sick of it. But we can't deny the reality that something has changed inside of us since the pandemic. Okay? Pre-COVID, from my perspective, from any church leader's perspective, they would tell you, pre-COVID, every healthy, growing church had the same problem. And that problem was, we cannot find enough leaders who will step in and lead small groups. It was the plague of the church. We could not find people to meet the need. We had so many people that wanted koinonia. So many people that wanted to be known. So many people that were like, I just need friends. I need community. We couldn't find enough leaders to keep up with it. Fast forward past COVID, it's the opposite. We've actually got, and it's not just our church, it's most churches that I speak to around the country. We've got way more leaders trained and ready for koinonia than we have people who are willing to give up a night of their week. Like, let's just call it what it is. Something happened in COVID that decreased our relational energy, decreased our willingness to invest deeper in current friendships and start new ones, and certainly decreased our willingness to give another night of our week. Something has changed inside of us. We don't have what they had. And here's the deal. I almost scrapped this entire message on Wednesday and said, I ain't preaching it. Because my commitment to you is always, I will never preach you something that I'm unwilling to live out myself. Right? I've said that all along. I'll continue to say, I will never say you should do something from the stage if I'm unwilling to do it myself. And when I listen to this message, and I'm like, I'm going to call all them to koinonia. I'm going to call all them to develop close and God-focused relationships and dive deeper into each other. Honestly, like when I saw the message, like, yeah, I don't know if I'm willing to do that. Least inspirational thing you're going to hear a pastor say. Honestly, I hear this message, and I'm like, I'm tired. I hear this message, I'm like, I ain't got more time for more relationships. In the past 6 months, I've had 2 different close friends of mine who have invited me to be a part of these groups that they're starting. Couples group, men's group, great chance for koinonia. And y'all, I said no to both. Now, granted, I've got other relationships and ministry is hard. We're all tired relationally. We all grieve what we've lost pre-COVID. We don't want to start new things. It's like we're all in the same boat. Something about being like indoors with screens nonstop and the rate of binge shows getting pumped out by Netflix. Something has changed, like it's messed with us. And I'm right there with you. I heard the beginnings of this message. I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. And if I can't do it, I'm not going to preach it. And so I almost scrapped it. And right at the last minute, right before I was getting ready to write a really feel-good message that we all could have just been happy with and gone home, right at the last second, God, he asked me a question. He said, before you throw that message away, I want to ask you, Petie, what would you do if your koinonia went away? If your fellowship, if your God-focused and consistent relationships went away? Not, and the question that I feel like he was posing to me, it wasn't like a morbid question, right? It wasn't like, what would you do if everyone got hit by a bus and you had to deal with death? It wasn't that. It was just like, I wasn't thinking death. I was just thinking, like, what if they weren't here? And so I started listing out the names of people, several people who I would consider koinonia, God-focused and consistent in my life. And I actually threw a picture up here of them for you, just some of the people that I wrote down immediately. And I started thinking through, Jared. I started thinking through Keith and Sherwin and Clay and Josh and Brooke and Taylor and Allison and my wife, Brittany. And I started thinking through all of them. And I thought, okay, these are people who, like, is it perfect? Is it what they had in Acts 2? Not quite. But if I had to show you, like, who are my God-focused, like, every time we get together, faith is coming up. Every time we get together, we're encouraging each other. Every time we get together, we're praying for each other. And consistent. I see them on a regular basis. I'm not going to go weeks at a time without seeing them, right? This is the list. And then God was like, okay, well, what if they weren't in your life? What would happen? And I started envisioning, like, Jared not in my life anymore. Jared's right down here, and he's drumming. But if Jared weren't here, Jared is probably the most constant source of joy and energy and vibrance. There's always an excitement from him about what God is doing here, and I feed off of it. It like feeds my soul. I remember when, it's hard when you're in here. You shouldn't be in here. I remember when I moved here almost 4 years ago, Jared and I sat down for lunch one day, and Jared said, Petie, I think God has called you here to help us become a church that passionately worships Jesus and passionately reaches people far from God, both at the same time. And he's like, and I'm going to help you build it. Let's go. And he's helped build it. Like, man, that'd be awful without Jared. And then Keith, if you took Keith out of my life, Keith, one of my favorite things about Keith, I told him this past week, Keith both leads and receives. To me, it's the most Christ-like thing. Keith leads here at Peak City. He leads our facilities team. He makes us better. And last service, he was sitting front row right here, receiving the message for himself. It's like humility and passion. It's such a godly characteristic I see in Keith all the time. If you took Sherwin out of my life, Sherwin is one of the saints of this church. And every time I talk to Sherwin, every single time without fail, I walk away encouraged, loved, and believed in. It never fails. Every single time. It's like, I don't know how someone could possibly be that encouraging, loving, and supportive, and yet he is. Man, you think about taking Clay out of my life. Clay, I always wish I could spend more time with Clay, because when I'm with Clay, there is no one else that matters to him. When you talk to Clay, if you talk to him out in the lobby, he will never look past you to the people that are behind you. He's locked in. His soul moves at a slower pace than the rest of us. It's the pace of Jesus. And I sit with him, and I just feel like his full attention is on me. It's just so beautiful. And I admire, and I want to copy that. I want to imitate that in my life. If I think about taking Josh and Brooke out of my life, they've taught me so much about honor, about humility, about obsession with the kingdom. I mean, they are so talented, and yet they will do anything to reach people who are far from God. And taking them out of my life, it's like, man, that would be awful. You think about Taylor and Allison, you take them out of my life. I mean, Allison is like the most, probably the most impactful and quiet leader at this church. She makes everything better at this church from beginning to end. Every event, everything's made better, and she never wants to be known. Most of the time, she's rocking a baby in the nursery. It's quiet leadership, and it's amazing. You think about Taylor. Taylor is the most. Not only is he the highest, he has the highest character, highest integrity of anyone I've ever met. I've never seen him not be truthful. But past that, he is the most gospel-obsessed person I've ever known. if someone preaches a message, myself included, that does not end up with the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, Taylor doesn't call it a sermon. You know what he calls it? A TED Talk. And this savage has said that to me before. At the end of sermons, he's been like, nice TED Talk. And then he just walks on. Because he knows that the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is the most important message that the world could ever hear. And why waste a single Sunday and not get to it? You take away Brittany, my primary example of Jesus. Hands and feet, forgiveness, grace, mercy, counsel, wisdom, quiet strength. So I sat there one by one and removed these people from my life and leave that black screen up there for me. Because when I got to the end of it, when I removed my koinonia, when I removed my God-focused, consistent relationships, then it clicked. Then I understood why the early followers of Jesus were devoted to fellowship, were devoted to koinonia. Can't stop, won't stop being with people who are God-focused and who are consistent in my life. It clicked for me. Because without my koinonia, if my fellowship is removed from my life, I don't see Jesus. Where is he? Put him back on the screen for just a second. When I spend time with them, I spend time with Jesus. When I see them, the characteristics shine through in Jared. They shine through Keith. I see Jesus come through in Sherwin. I see Jesus come through in every conversation with Clay. I see Jesus come through in the way Brooke and Josh serve. I see Jesus come through in their ruthless commitment the Warrens have to the mission. And I see Jesus come through my wife every single day. And without them, it'd be a heck of a lot harder to follow someone that I cannot see. See, this is the secret. This is the secret. This is what the earliest followers had tapped into, is that Christ, I know this is crazy, but this is why you can see Jesus though he's not here. Because Jesus lives in you. He lives in you. The earliest followers of Jesus, they knew it. Look at Ephesians 3:17. Paul says, then Christ will make his home where? In your hearts. In your hearts. Colossians 1:27, he says it like this, and this is the secret. Christ lives where? In you. In you. In you. Galatians 2:20. I've been crucified with Christ and I no longer live, but Christ lives where? In me. When you believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is not just a good teacher, but that he is the Lord and Savior of your life, and you confess with your mouth that you're going to follow him, his Spirit, he makes your heart his home. And that means every time you show up to church, you bring Jesus with you. That means every time you show up to a small group, you bring Jesus with you. Every time you show up for a coffee meeting, you bring Jesus with you. I know it ain't perfect. I know you mess up. I know sin gets in the way, but you still got Jesus oozing through you. Every time you show up to small group, every time you show up here, there are so many people that are bringing Jesus here. You are bound to see him. You are going to see him through other people. See, when I refuse to engage in koinonia, to build koinonia, when we come in and we just observe on a Sunday and then go on through the rest of our week, instead of investing in God-focused, consistent relationships, when we don't do that, we are denying, you have to catch this, we are denying the presence of Jesus in our lives. Jesus is still here. Jesus is still putting on flesh and bone. It's just your flesh and bone, and it's mine. This is why they were devoted to it. They were obsessed because they just couldn't get enough of Jesus. And they knew, man, I know cracking open a beer with the boys and just talking about sports, there's time and a place for that. But there's no way I'm going to give that more priority than being with someone who I can see Jesus through them. I can encounter Jesus. I can show up and meet Jesus in this. See, you got to be devoted to koinonia. You've got to be devoted to the fellowship. If you want to follow him, if you want to get as close as you can to Jesus, yes, you need to get close to his word, and you also need to get close to his people. You going to follow Jesus? You got to get close to his people. And that's why the challenge is very simply this, okay? This is where practical nuts and bolts meets the road here. Okay, this is it. If you want to follow Jesus in this way, you need to build koinonia. You need to build God-focused and consistent relationships with 3 to 5 people. I want to just give it to you in the most easy, actionable way you can. You need to build God-focused and consistent relationships with 3 to 5 people. That's your challenge. And I want to be very clear about what I'm saying here. The challenge is for you to build it. You need to build your own koinonia. I can't, and the church can't build it for you. I'm going to say this. I know it's going to make somebody mad. It's all good. You need to hear it. It is not the church's responsibility to manage your social life. It's not the church's responsibility to make your koinonia for you, to make your it's not. I'll be held responsible for a lot of things at the end of this. I will gladly take responsibility for the stewarding of our resources. I'll gladly take responsibility for making sure I faithfully preach the gospel every week. I will gladly take responsibility for making sure that we address sin in this church. I will gladly take responsibility for making sure we care for our staff. I'll take responsibility for all that. What I will not take responsibility for at the end of this thing, it is not my responsibility to be your ChristianSingles.com matchmaker. That ain't on me. It's our responsibility as a church to provide you avenues for you to build koinonia. And I know our avenues can get better. We're always going to work on making them better. We're always going to work on, more small groups and making culture class better. But come on, y'all. The avenues are there. Just this morning, we had like 20 or 30 people in culture class meeting each other and learning about the church. You want to meet people? Go to culture class. You want to build koinonia? Go next week. You missed week 1? That's all right. Start on week 2. Our website, click on it, go to groups. Find a group. Join it. If you don't like the first one, if they're weird, it's all good. Join another one. If that doesn't work, join another one. If that doesn't work, start one. It's not, when koinonia, when the fellowship is forced on you, when you are forced to do things and build relationships, it just doesn't work. You have to take responsibility for it. You have to build God-focused, consistent relationships with 3 to 5 people and watch what happens. Watch how your faith grows. Watch how you're held accountable. Watch how everything begins to change. Because Jesus did not die on a cross just to save you from your sins. When Jesus stretched his arms out to die on the cross, it was never just about you. It was always about us. It was always not just a person he was saving. It was a people he was saving. It was a forgiven people, not just a forgiven person. When he stretched his arms out on the cross, it wasn't just about me. It was always about we. It was about a family he was bringing together. I mean, come on. Even when Jesus was on the cross, even when his arms were stretched out and he's dying, read what he does. He looks down and he sees Mary, his mother, and he sees John, his closest disciple. And as he's dying, he looks down and he says, Mary, this man, John, this is your son. Love him like you loved me. Devote yourself to him like you devoted yourself to me. Respect him, honor him, support him. This is your son. And he looks at John and he goes, I know this ain't your biological mama, but this is your mother. Treat her like family. Support her, love her, encourage her, honor her, lift her up. This is your mother. This is your son. It's always about koinonia. It was always about a tighter knit family. And I'm telling you right now, the people in this room that you are sitting with, if you're online with us, get here. The people you are in this room with right now, this can be your koinonia if you will build it. And that's why I want you to do something really awkward right now. I told you we're warming up for something. Everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. If you're online, look at your cat. If you're in the back half of the room, just stay put. You don't need to move. What I want you to do is, if you're in the front half of the room, I want you to just turn and get a vantage point where you can see the most amount of people. And I want you to be able to see eyes. I want you to be able to lock eyes with people. And this is where it gets awkward. I believe with all of my heart that if Jesus were here in the flesh, and I believe that he's probably using me to say it to you right now, I think he would say, look around you. These are your brothers. These are your sisters. These are your sons. These are your daughters. These are your mothers. These are your fathers. Keep looking. Keep looking at them. This is meant to be your family. And these are the people that can hold you accountable. They can pray for you. They can lift you up. They can help you become the man or the woman that you were always created to be. But you've got to build it. You've got to make the lobby more intentional. Go meet people. Go get in culture class. Go ask some people you sat in the row with out to lunch. You've got to build it. But this is the family that God has brought you into. If you don't believe yet, if you're not sure about Jesus, we say it around here all the time. You can belong before you believe. You have family in this room. You have people here who will accept you and love you no matter what you've done. It's family. It's koinonia. It's the fellowship. Now, it doesn't. No more awkwardness. Turn back and face me now. Stay standing, though. Stay standing. This is what it takes to follow Jesus. And now it's on you to do it. It's on you to take the steps. You know what to do, whether it's hanging out in the lobby more after service and being more intentional, whether it's people that you've had some surface relationships with that you need to get really intentional with them. Sign up for culture class, get in a group. Heck, I don't know, the avenues are there. Just go do it. But you have to decide in your heart that that's the step you want to take today. And so I want to give you a chance to make a decision for Jesus today. For some of you, it's the very first time you'll ever commit yourself to following him because you've realized today that this is the way that God wants to lead you out of isolation. This is the path out of loneliness. And so maybe today you're following Jesus because you love him, but also because you're ready to step out of the darkness. And then for the rest of you, I think it's time for us all to make a decision that we're not going to let COVID, we're not going to let anything be an excuse anymore for us not making this the most tight-knit family. One day, I just believe that people will walk in here and go, man, I'm not sure about Jesus yet, but those people love hanging out. Those people love each other, and it's special.
Thank you so much for joining us for this Peak City message today. If you'd like more information on Peak City Church, or if you'd like to give to the mission here in Colorado Springs, then check us out at peakcityco.com.